we plan to begin to educate our community. By this, we mean we will break the barriers that are currently in place, not allowing the smallest in our community to thrive. We will develop sincere and honest dialogue with our contemporaries, and we will promote a healthy exchange of ideas with our elders, for whom we have the utmost respect. All of these stages, we hope, will wake the curiosity in our community about itself. It is why we are called the Awoken Jaguar movement. We're not going to indoctrinate anyone. We're not going to tell them which way is best. We're going to allow our children to fly and live and to dream.
Yes.
We'll be giving them the right tools so that they aren't swayed by the markers that are imposed in school every day. We'll give them new, broader, freer ones that will give them a new sense of exploring themselves in the world and for the world, making education a means for exploring their duties, giving them hope so that they may fill their parents with hope. It won't be abstract learning about ancient civilizations whose existence, they tell us, have no effect on us. Education and learning requires a certain reading of our reality. We are all migrants, and we are all here. Our individual realities make up a collective reality, and we must explore it.
Yep.
We must learn about the past in order to understand the present, in order to make the future better. We, the young, hold the key now, and it is necessary to take a step back and once again look at the broader picture. Look at the movement that is occurring on our land, interpret it, explore it, so that what we find always aims to liberate our people and our land. For this, we must have an understanding of the relationship between politics, both national and international, and the people in our continent. Too much disinterest and too much reliance on heavily biased media has created barriers to our understanding of politics. If we accept education to be a democratic act where what we teach and how we teach it is in itself democratic, then we must also make reference to the great importance of being politically educated.
Yep.
This is because the relationship between education and politics is heavily based around interest. Developing interest in change requires education in politics, which will only be a tool for change if there is an interest in change, and this can only be provided by education. And we want change, so we must delve into politics.
Yeah.
I must first make it clear that politics and democracy isn't simply voting once every 4 years in the hope that the person who represents you will be able to provide for your every need in the subsequent 4 years. No. Politics is much more than this, and it must be practiced every day without fail. The vote is simply the first step, and it can only serve as a tool for organization. Now, I say organization and not mobilization. It is easy to get a group of people out on the streets protesting about the lack of individual needs which aren't being met. Organization requires sustained action. It requires a complete change of consciousness, and it must be seen as a means for turning the feelings of the oppressed into something more than just indignation. If the foundations for our liberation are based on education, then we must see politics as a means by which we can organize to make our liberation tangible. The dominant class will always, because of their own power, marginalize those who are oppressed. They will first always reject what is different. Second, never expect to be equal to what is different. And third, have no intention in allowing the oppressed class to ever be equal to them. This is why, when economists hail the growing middle class, it shocks us to think that this middle class, though it may be growing, will normally tend to forget that before they were part of the middle class, they were part of a working class, and their status as being oppressed hasn't changed at all. This is why organizing is so important. Everything in this current society invites us to divide. If we look at the problems facing our people back home, you will find that the underlying factor in all these problems has to do with a number of conditions, normally implicit, but never openly denounced or debated. A set of conditions that are designed exclusively to divide. Organizing must not be the coming together of a group of people seeking individual needs. If we are going to let organizing unite us, then we must first understand that before we have a responsibility to ourselves, we have a responsibility to our people. We have a responsibility to transform ourselves from people who think about living off the community to people dedicated to defending the community, interested only in giving everything they can to the community.
Yeah.
If we are to accept that politics is a means for change, then we must understand the necessity for the change that must occur in ourselves. For decades and decades, Governments in our continent promised reform after reform. Reform the judiciary, reform land distribution, reform the welfare system, and so on. Well, the reality is that these colonial governments will never push reform. They'll never push reform enough to constitute any real change. Reform is for the reformists. And reformists are apologists and moderates who do not believe things will actually ever change. They are only an annex to the dominant class. It isn't surprising when a large handful of countries in the continent still ascribe politics only to the oligarchy. These reforms so frivolously promised were never ever going to be delivered. This is why there needs to be an organized, united group of people conscious of the power of politics. We don't want reform, we want freedom.
Yeah.
We have a responsibility to our people. If you're Nicantlaka, then you have a responsibility to your people. You have a responsibility to denounce the wrongs and praise the rights. Follow the good example that threatens the US. Follow the good example of Evo, who has changed the face of Bolivia. A Bolivia that is enjoying its best moment in 500 years, where the indigenous population and their values are starting to represent modernity.
Bravo!
It's incredible. Follow the good example of Correa, who openly uses the same economic training used to rob our people in the last 200 years on the same multinationals that trained them.
Woo!
Yes.
We're not saying these projects for change are complete or that they have no faults and limitations, but we must always look at the bigger picture. The West, the North, has imposed its rule for 500 years, and we will take as many years as we need to rid ourselves of that rule.
Yes.
The threat of the good example is a threat because other countries might see that there is real change occurring in these places. It is a threat because we all know that sustained and democratic change creates new realities. And as we get ready to listen to our speakers, we feel the need to thank Venezuela. Thank you, Chavez, who from the beginning announced the death and of the illusion that is development dependent on corrupt politics.
Yes.
Thank you for bravely voicing the real need to make democracy more than just a stage for the sophisticated, the proprietors, or the lettered. Thank you, Chavez, for breaking the chains binding all Nicantlaka to the will of the hegemon.
Yeah.
Thank you for showing us that Western capitalist democracy is not fundamental for development. There is much to learn from Chavez, and this should be done critically. All learning should. But if we are considering reviving our identity as Nicantlaka, then we must thank Chavez for giving us our voice back and laying the foundations on which we can build an alternative. The Venezuelan revolution has been crucial to the wider philosophy shared and applied by many governments of the Tawantinsuyu. And although multinationals have won over the mind of the middle class in Venezuela, fomenting a deeply rooted fear, exploited and conveniently turned into irrational hatred, the majority of Venezuelans believe with ever stronger passion that the start of something great is consolidated daily on our land. They are the good example, and the voices and screams of the middle class who are keen on doing nothing else will undeniably fade away. In 1999, Javier Garcia Marquez wondered after interviewing Chavez whether history would render him either another despot confined to his illusions or a hero who had saved his country. Chavez, your legacy is changing history itself.
Woo!
Yes.
So please don't let those who have resigned themselves to oppression and those who believe that more capital is the best option forward shape your thinking. Don't let our belief in basing all your actions towards the betterment of your people shape your thinking either. Develop your own critical thought. Educate yourself, build your identity. Remember that this only happens when you appreciate identity is both inherited and acquired. Organize. Let us help you organize. It's simple. Our great leader, Tupac Amaru, put it this way. The people who do not cultivate their memory will never be able to construct their own history. They will lack independence and sovereignty. They will not be able to interpret their past, confront their present, or project their future. Thank you.
Bravo!